everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I am Skylar with Lean Frontiers. On our screen, you can see Jim, William, Oscar, and Doug. Doug and William and Oscar will be taking on the next 30 minutes. And just a quick reminder, within the next 24 to 48 hours, you will receive a link directly from me. That is a link to the recording. Oscar, we have kind of slowed down, but you can go ahead and take over.
All right, thank you. And as I always do at the start of these things, thank you, Skylar and Lean Frontiers, for the behind-the-scene work that goes to putting these things together. So a couple of things to start with. I would like to welcome Doug Epping and William Harvey. I've got some just a quick brief notes about both of them. Doug is a liquids packaging manager. Is the liquids packaging manager at Helena Industries at the Des Moines plant. He understands the foundations of getting results through people and works hard to establish an environment that makes this work as a leader easier. Dr. William Harvey is a mid-career Kaizen coach, a practitioner and organizational architect who thrives in developing organic needs-based continuous improvement programs. William serves as the multi-site plant manager at Michelman and as a professor at the University of Cincinnati. So welcome both, and thank you for joining us. So in terms of the format, you may want to spotlight, certainly when I'm talking, you may want to spotlight your screen with me in the middle on the whiteboard, because I'm going to be writing on that whiteboard and it'll be helpful probably for you to see what I'm going to cover. So after this short introduction, I'm going to give you an overview of routines, two routines, improvement kata and job relations. Then the similarities and differences. I'm going to ask Doug to comment on a comment that he made to me about 4 months ago. William is going to give his feelings on job relations. And then right at the end, we're going to note that an opportunity for you to learn more at the AME conference coming up in Cincinnati. So to get started, a couple of things. First is a point of introduction. I mentioned that I was going to give you an overview of routines, and I'm going to use that word routine deliberately instead of method, because neither the improvement kata, which is what we're comparing, when we're looking at and analysing, if you like, or comparing improvement kata and job relations, they're often referred to as methods. But in my view, neither of those two are methods, they're both routines. And just to set the foundation for that, a method is a systematic way of doing something, often involving a series of steps or procedures. A routine is a sequence of actions regularly followed in order to develop a skill. So a routine is a sequence of actions regularly followed in order to develop a skill. And both the improvement kata and job relations are definitely routines in that context. I want to establish that from the start. So let's have a look at the improvement. And I've got some notes just to make sure I stick to what we planned to cover. So let's have a look at the routine of the improvement kata. First of all, we have a goal. First of all, the routine encourages us to establish a goal. Then we study and understand and grasp the current condition. Then we understand, study and grasp the current condition. From there, we establish a target condition, or a condition we're going to target. From there, we establish a target condition, a condition we're going to target. And then lastly, we experiment towards that condition. We experiment towards that condition we're going to target. So that's a very brief summary of the improvement kata routine. Now, the improvement kata routine develops scientific thinking if practiced. And I'll say that very strongly. It develops the scientific thinking if practiced, or when practiced. It develops scientific thinking. Again, I'll repeat, only if practiced. It's not a silver bullet. Similarly, job relations. Let's compare now to job relations. Job relations, we start off, this is the four-step routine on the back of the card. The four-step routine starts off with an objective. starts off with an objective. In other words, what do we want? What do we want things to look like when the dust has settled? Then we get the facts. Then we get the facts. After we've got the facts, we weigh and decide. In other words, we decide what to do. We weigh the facts and decide. Then we take action. Then we take action. And one of the important things to realize there is you're in new territory when you're taking that action. Take action is really an experiment, because the action you're taking, you don't know what's going to be the outcome of that action. So taking action is your experiment in the scientific thinking model, if you like. And then lastly, we follow up. And it's important to follow up because taking action is an experiment. Now, this routine of job relations, when with the foundation, develops leadership skills if practiced. So it develops leadership skills if practiced, only if practiced. And one of the things I forgot to say at the start, and I apologize, if anybody have any questions as we're discussing this content, then please submit the questions into Zoom, and Skylar's going to interrupt us and let us know. So if you've got any questions, please fire those questions in. So as I said, improvement kata is a routine to develop scientific thinking. Job relations is a routine to develop scientific thinking with a people view. So it develops leadership skills, but it also develops scientific thinking with a people view. So it develops scientific thinking with a people view. And I think this has been really well captured, William, and I don't know if it was you who said it, but I think I picked it up at the AME conference in Atlanta last year, that that job relations is a hard science for soft people issues. A hard science for soft people issues. William, was it you who said that? Do you recall? And if
I would love to take credit, but that was one of your other brilliant folks that you were talking to that night.
okay, when I wrote this down, I thought I'm sure I picked it up at Atlanta, but I can't remember who it was. But I think that's an important point, that the job relations routine is a hard science, in other words, scientific thinking, for for soft people issues, a hard science for soft people issues. Now, again, William and Doug, interrupt me. You've got more practical experience with job relations and scientific thinking than I have. You've got more workplace experience. So interrupt me at any point. The people
Oscar,
view.
I do have a question for you. Just so
yes.
I can really say one of the things I struggled with, when I learned job relations, is the difference between solving a people problem and handling a people problem. I don't necessarily know that we need to go so deep in it, but that might be worth chatting about so people understand perhaps a slight difference between kata and JR.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. And I've just realized I didn't get my pocket card off the shelf and put it on the table, which is what I just ran over and grabbed. So it's a great point, and it took me a little while, probably took me a few years to click onto that. At the top of the pocket card, for which is actually the back of the card, not the front, where it's got the 4-step routine for handling a problem, it quite deliberately does say how to handle a problem. It doesn't say how to solve a problem. And I realized I was actually using the word solve, even though the card said handle. Now, the background of that is, and what I understood after probably 3 or 4 years of battling away, the background of that is that in terms of handling people issues, it's very, very rare that one swing of the bat, in other words, one action, actually resolves the issue. It's very, very rare that one swing of the bat resolves the issue. I mean, some of you might have clicked that what's really going on in both these patterns, is a PDCA cycle. Now, you'll notice that I've written that as a cycle. It's not PDCA stop. If it was solve a problem, job relations, it'd be PDCA stop, one swing of the bat, done. But it's not. It's PDCA cycle. And actually, when you go down to follow up, in follow-up, you're actually gathering more facts. So in follow-up, you're actually gathering more facts, which may lead you to modify an objective and go around again. So it's quite deliberately handle a problem because it's PDCA based and because you're rarely going to resolve a human issue in one swing of the bat. Does that cover what you were thinking, William?
It does. I appreciate the clarity there. And I'm curious, Oscar, from your recollection, when we talk about opinions and feelings being part of the story and getting the facts, where does that show up for you in your practice and how you coach leaders?
Good question. So let me answer that. And Doug, then I've got a question for you in this that's coming. So there's three. I noted here that scientific thinking has a people view. There's three parts of job relations that provide the people view in scientific thinking. The first one is in get the facts, because we must consider people's opinions and feelings. And then I'll come back to your question, William. So there's three things in job relations that make this scientific thinking with a people view. One is in get the facts. We must consider opinions and feelings. When we weigh and decide, we consider the effect on the individual and the group. We consider the effect on individual. We consider the effect on individual and the group. So there's a person thing. There's one person factor. There's another person factor. And in follow-up, we check for changes in attitudes and relationships. Attitudes and relationships. So there's three areas of job relations that are absolutely critical that make this scientific thinking with a people view. Now, the question, William, as I understood it, was why is opinions and feelings such an important part of getting the facts? Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Good. So what a person thinks and what a person feels are facts to them. And even though you perceive as their leader that they may be wrong or they are misjudging the situation, in actual fact, that's completely irrelevant. Because if the person has this thought or feeling, then it is what it is. And this is going to sound wrong, but if that's what they think and that's what they feel, then that's what you're up against. So, and it's part of the current condition. It's part of the current situation. That's what you're up against. Therefore, you must take it into account. You can't discard what they think and feel. If you discard what people are thinking and feeling, then you are discarding part of the whole story and a big part of the whole story. Because how people think and what they feel is going to very much influence their actions. So, Doug, I'd like to go back to you, please. We talked about job relations and this routine you've got for scientific thinking. What's been your experience so far I know you guys are working with at Helena in both practicing the improvement charter and job relations. What's your thoughts on the parallels, and what's your experience in having to go around this thing more than once in a given situation?
Well, you guys have been talking about the back of the card. When I was with you in our training, we really focused on the front of the card, which I found to be the most valuable part of the card. And how we're applying them to work standards, I think that every foundation of JR applies. And I think that they're all kind of connected. And I can just really briefly go through each one and give you my thoughts on each one. The first foundation would be letting each worker know how they're doing. I think that work standards kind of in a general way are letting everyone know how they're doing and kind of setting expectations, because they're in essence pointing out ways to improve. The second foundation is giving credit when credit is due. I think work standards, when you're kind of getting started with them, more than likely require like a mental shift, because you're kind of promoting or trying to get people to be comfortable in discovering things that are abnormal and that aren't okay, right? And so positive feedback and communication are pretty important in fostering progress with that. we're not punishing people for that kind of thing. We're saying, hey, great job, right? And that's actually part of the getting started with work standards training. So the third foundation is tell people in advance about changes that will affect them. I think that in regard to work standards in particular, that's the most impactful foundation, because they're probably going to change the way that people do work and are doing work, and they have to be comfortable in that. So preparing them for that, I think, is probably the most important part. And then using expertise from subject matter experts is, a good demonstration of using people, or the best use of people's abilities. So I think that they kind of are all connected, in that if we prepare people by correctly communicating the purpose and intent of work standards, and then we're creating work standards that are, like I said, kind of setting expectations using the knowledge of subject matter experts, and then we're actively promoting positive feedback and positive communications and interactions, we're really kind of using all the foundations all at once in conjunction with each other,
Yeah.
So that's kind of been my experience in a nutshell, high level. In regard to work standards, COD is a different story. I'm less involved in that now.
No problem. So it's interesting, because what I hear you saying through this, Doug, is front of the card, back of the card, but we have there's still an objective sitting there, but your take actions, if you like, have been driven by the front of the card, the foundation
Absolutely.
side.
Yep.
Yeah. So what's your experience been with the value of the front of the card? And I'm sort of giving you a leading question. What's been your value with the front of the card, and therefore not having to spend so much time on the back of the card?
Right. So using the front of the card is being way more proactive, instead of reacting to problems with the back of the card and handling problems. You try to avoid the problems altogether by using the foundations to build those relationships.
Sure. Yeah, and it's an interesting perspective, because one of the things I've come to realize, and it's tied up with the 4 ways that problems arise, if you like, that if you use the front of the card, the foundation side, then it prevents the negative facts building up. It prevents the negative facts accumulating, which causes you to have to go to the back of the card, if you like. So I love that way you've focused on there's many vehicles. Your work standards are just one vehicle you can use to practice the front of the card, if you like. And you guys have, and that's a whole nother story. You guys are using it very effectively. It really sort of, in some ways, doesn't matter what the vehicle is. The point is that you're spending time on the front, but you're still using a scientific thinking pattern. You have an objective of getting these work standards in place. You've considered people's opinions and feelings and all this. Your actions are foundations based, which is fantastic. Yeah, I love it. Now, Doug, you did make the comment to me, and maybe this is tied in. The comment I referred to at the start of the webinar was about 4 months ago. You said to me, JR is at the forefront of applying work standards principles. Do you want to add to that, or have you really covered that with that illustration of the foundations at the front?
I think that I've covered quite a bit of it. I guess another thing maybe to mention would be that in my experience, in regards to the training in particular, in my experience, the material is less important, and how you present the material is what really truly matters. And one thing that you said to me during our train the trainer was, you don't want to train to demonstrate your knowledge. You want to train to extend the knowledge of the learner. And that kind of stuck with me. And I think using that principle and a little bit of enthusiasm, and then using the JR foundations, has really helped me get buy-in to the material. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, great combination of putting those principles together. And look, that's why I differentiate between the improvement cadre and job relations being a method as opposed to a routine. A routine is a sequence of actions regularly followed in order to develop a skill, and that allows flex. Once you've developed the skill, then you Doug Epping-ize it, or William Harvey-ize it, or Oscar Roche it, or whatever it may be. If you think of it as a routine, a method tends to get stuck. If you think of something as a method, then you tend to get stuck in the method. And that's not the intent of either the improvement kata or the job relations routine or many others that are around. William, do you want to comment on that? Perhaps I think you've got some pretty robust thoughts on that. Do you want to comment on that, what I've just said there?
A new thought actually came to me as you shared that, because I'm thinking about TWI job methods.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think that's a really good way for me to think through this. Is like it's a what versus a how conversation a lot of times. And I think as a what, like how do I do my task, but how do I go about developing that task isn't going to be as precise. It's adaptive. And I think that's where these routines come in very helpful for folks.
Sure. Very valuable. So, William, have you further feelings on JR? I know you're passionate about practicing JR. Why? Firstly, where has that passion come from? Why has it developed?
I think in my heart of hearts, you mentioned at the beginning, I love teaching. So after my day job, I go home and help out students get to their next level. And I think it just comes to just a core personality trait. And what I share with job relations for me was it was deceptively simple. I read it,
Yep.
thought, I already do this. And then I connected with you and a few others that have been really valuable mentors. You walked me through those questions, provided some input that I hadn't considered. And I know, at least in my personal practice, it became one of those things I was even more committed to, and have since shared that with a few other folks to say, let's step back, because I looked at the technical problems with a very system view. I didn't look at people problems with a system view as much. And that JR really helped me open my eyes to something new to practice.
Yeah, perfect. I like that view. I like that comment of looking at people problems with a system view. And I think, JR, if you consider the 3 points at which the people side comes in, then you can do that. But if you look at people problems, if you address people problems systematically without the people view, then you're missing something key and you're probably not going to have a lot of success. So that understanding the people view of the system and these 3 points, at least, in which it comes in of the importance of opinions and feelings, the way in deciding and consider the individual group, and that follow up where we check attitudes and relationships, that's the people view of the systematic approach. And I think that's really, really important. Anything further would either one of you would like to add in terms of job relations in particular and your experience with it? Any particular case that you've gone through or had to handle that you want to add some thoughts on? If there's not, then William, you might want to speak. We've only got 7 minutes left. So do you want to speak about the AME conference?
Yeah, I'll do that in just a moment, Oscar. I want to go back to your question. I was trying to give Doug a chance to come in if he had a story that really resonated. One that I know, at least for me, when I became the coach in JR in this story, so I was learning from you and some others. I was working with a former coworker who was going through some of these stressors himself. And very quickly, I found when I was using JR, he had some built-in assumptions about how the world was working, how people were engaging. We actually got stuck on this problem of a person thought they were being helpful, but their coworkers disagreed with that assessment. So we worked through that people problem of like, how do you approach people to offer unsolicited advice or unsolicited help? And just watching him journey through that was a really incredible way, because he ended up getting to a good place and reframing what help looked like. But had I taken that approach in the past, it would have been more, I call it more method-based versus routine-based. So I don't know that he would have come up with a different answer approaching the context that I didn't have. So I think for me,
Sure.
watching that unfold from his side was really incredible, because it felt like what I was doing with you and some others a year or so ago.
Sure. Doug, you might be able to relate to that, because what I'm thinking about is that week I had with you guys at Des Moines, and we had a job relations or a people issue unfold, if you'll recall it, I think,
I do.
during that week. And to use your words, William, it was the most incredible situation I've ever been through in terms of the value of job relations, because we struck there's no names for sure, but just to give a very brief overview, we struck a situation where it was crystal clear within 5 or 10 minutes of the start of the workshop week that there was an individual who didn't want to be there and was actually detracting from the whole class and pulling the others down. And I saw that and I thought, this is a job relations challenge. In my mind, that's what I thought, this is what it is. Without going into the detail, that person within a day and a half, and by the end of the week was an incredibly valuable contributor. You would agree, Doug?
Yeah, yeah, it was a complete 180 in attitude and everything, right?
Yeah, and through that we were I certainly was very conscious of practicing the foundations. I mean, in my mind, I established an objective that this group needs to get value from this week. So I had an objective, I had current condition, but I had to take, regardless of regardless of what I thought of that individual had opinions and feelings that in their mind was very valuable. And at the moment, at that point, earlier in the week, were detracting from their contribution and the whole group. But we have to take that into account. Then, on the fly, I was weighing and deciding, and not obviously, we didn't take action, but there were certainly actions taken. But through this scientific thinking pattern with the people view, opinions and feelings, individual and group, and attitudes and relationships, that situation was turned around to a complete positive one. It's a good example. So we've got 4 minutes left, William. Skylar, have any questions come in? I haven't seen them. I'm assuming not.
No.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. Okay, I saw that one there from David. I thought that might have been a question. William, would you like to just expand on opportunity at AME conference in St. Louis in October? If people want to
Check 'em
learn
out
more.
real quick. It says, why is Vital Pursue Systems implemented instead of chasing tools?
Sorry, say that again.
Why is Vital Pursue Systems implemented instead of chasing tools?
Vital pursue systems. Ask the
Oscar,
person to. You go, William, if you know.
I think the question is, why is it vital to pursue systems instead of chasing tools?
What's your thoughts on that, William or Doug? Why is developing human systems and human habits more important than chasing tools? I've got some thoughts. Have either of you two got thoughts?
For me, the habit forming process of routines helps me deal with adaptive problems. And I know when I talk with some folks in the Toyota Kata specific area, we'll talk a lot about how problems change. And I know at least with people, they're constantly changing. Relationships change, they get better, they get worse. And ultimately, if I don't take an approach where the world's dynamic, I think I end up with a method that just doesn't work. So if I'm taught in routines on how to think and go about solving problems, that's going to be different than what specific tool do I use. Because in the end, I don't think anybody cares the method to get there. We care that the problem is solved. And that's going to be dynamic based on the folks involved.
And I think a specific tool assumes there's a specific issue. So if you've got a specific tool, then it assumes there's a specific issue. And assuming there's a specific issue might be dangerous. And the other thing is that the issues will, even though the issue may be common, the context will vary when different people are involved. And that's a whole other conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, very much so. And let's just say, Oscar, to wrap up in the 30 seconds or so we have, what came to me in the conferences has been people will talk about technical problems in a very soft way. And what I found for me was there are these really amazing methods and routines out there that already solve the problem I'm trying to solve. They just don't know about them. So as I saw one comment, the person didn't even hear about JR before. And to me, that's really the value. So as I thought about this year's workshops for AME or the Association for Manufacturing Excellence, it was how do we get Oscar and some other experts in the room to talk through these, I'll call them the tangential tools that really enable people to have organizational success. So really excited to see people in St. Louis, not Cincinnati, October 6th through the 9th later this year.
We've got a couple of job relations and a job instruction workshops on the Monday, and I'll facilitate those, but I've got industry people coming in and co-facilitating with me. So it's not just a theorist, which I tend to be. So I'm really looking forward to delivering those on behalf of AME. Doug and William, thank you very much for being involved in this webinar. I really appreciate your time. And William, very quickly, and it's going to take 1 minute. Next week at the very same time, you're going to be talking about?
Motivational interviewing. So something I had a really wonderful chance to connect with the Lean Frontiers community about was this idea of how do you help people through change? And Oscar and I've had some really good chats since then. But this also comes out of some of the work that I've struggled with is how do I get people to change? How do I help them through this work that we're all trying to do to make the organizations we work at better? And out of the work I've done, I've come across this thing called motivational interviewing, which I think is a game changer in how we approach change in organizations. So really excited to see you back next week, Oscar, amongst those other 100 or 50 so people that are signed up and ready to come hang out with us.
Good. So if you haven't signed up for next week, there's a distinct connection between motivational interviewing and practicing the job relations routine. Please sign up for that. All right. Thanks, William. Thanks, Doug. Have a great afternoon. Skylar and Jim, thank you very much for providing the three of us the opportunity to have this discussion.